Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of the Carolina Weather Group. We are live here on this Thursday night, a special night for us because we are watching an area of thunderstorms that has really been garnering everyone's attention for the last 24 to 36 hours. Matter of fact, if you were with us last night on our regular night, you know we were talking about some of these thunderstorms in the system that made its way toward and through the Midwest, parts of the Chicago area, parts of Illinois, Indiana. If you've been watching the news today, you've been seeing some of that storm damage. Well, now part of that system is making its way into the Carolinas, down into the Piedmont. You're taking a look right now at the latest radar scan from Knoxville, Tennessee, where right now we do have one warning. This is outside the Carolinas, but just a short time ago, as we were getting ready to begin this special coverage here on YouTube, we had numerous severe thunderstorm warnings, including for some folks in the high country of North Carolina along the border there with Virginia. So right now we're looking at just one active warning right now, but the reason we thought it was important to bring this coverage to you is because there is quite a bit of activity as you begin to look at what's marching southward, south and east or so, as it makes its way here into the Carolinas. And you can also see not only are we talking about heavy rain, but lots and lots of lightning. So we'll be breaking down some of this and showing you some of the bulletins here over the course of the next little bit as this begins to move into the area. I would of course like to say and like to be transparent with everybody at all times. This is something that we've done special coverage before, but we're going to try something a little bit new tonight with lots of elements. So your feedback, as always, is appreciated, and you can reach out to us on Facebook and Twitter. Just look up the Carolina Weather Group. But I'm James Brierton in Charlotte. We'll have some of our other regular panelists on as well as we go through the rest of the evening here. And you can already see that we're beginning to see some really heavy pockets of rain already coming into the North Carolina region from the moving south and east from Virginia. You're really going to begin to notice this in terms of metroplexes real quickly here in the Greensboro area. Already some rain falling now in Summerfield. We don't have any warnings out right now for our neck of the woods, but what we did get just a short time ago was an update from the Storm Prediction Center. And if you watch our show or are weather aware, you'll know that's based in Norman, Oklahoma, where they do a lot of the severe weather forecasting. And what was significant and what caught our attention was the latest update from them places a lot of us, especially if you're in the northern fringe of North Carolina, in what's considered a enhanced risk for severe storms. Let me go ahead and pop this up on your screen here, and you're taking a look at the homepage for the Storm Prediction Center, or as we like to call it, the SPC, and you can see there's a lot going on right now in our neck of the woods here in North Carolina, and maybe some of our friends in the Virginia and Tennessee regions. And you can see right here where my mouse is circling, kind of that orange color, that's enhance. What does that mean? Well, if you're not familiar with the Storm Prediction Center's degree of severity here, think of it as a scale from 0 to 5. And in this case, enhance falls on 3. They're down here kind of in the bottom right-hand portion of the screen, but if you can't see it, the first tier is really like a 0, and that's kind of a general thunderstorm, and that's the lighter shade of green you're seeing, and that carries down into parts of South Carolina, down into Columbia, maybe parts of Greenville, where we really then start getting into this darker green. That's a marginal risk, or 1 out of 5. What really is catching our attention tonight here at 10:40 at night, kind of later into the evening than what we really see, generally speaking, severe thunderstorms. A lot of times you'll get things during the day, but what is so key about this system and what has been fueling it the entire time and is going to play a huge factor for us tonight, you've all know what it is, and it's thunderstorm fuel, in this case, in the version of heat. If you stepped outside today anywhere in the Carolinas, in the Piedmont, large parts of the country are experiencing it as well. Lots and lots of heat. So we have lots of heat now as the system makes its way into, and that's why we have a slight and an enhanced risk, a 2 and a 3 on the scale of 5 here as we go on through the next little bit. So what exactly is it that we are looking for? Well, they do break it down into certain categories. Of course, everyone always thinks first of tornadoes when you're talking about severe weather, and that is certainly a very devastating type of severe weather, but isn't always the most common. What are we looking at tonight? Generally speaking, 2%, 5% chance of seeing a tornado. The best chance of seeing one of these tornadoes, maybe Roanoke, Virginia area, down into Greensboro, north of the Charlotte metro area, and maybe parts back into Raleigh. 5%, not a very large percent when you consider that, of course, the scale is out of 100, but certainly something that catches our eye. What we're really thinking we're going to see more so than tornadoes is the wind threat. You can see a red bullseye there on the map, and this is the area we've been talking about, Roanoke, Greensboro. This is pretty much north of the Charlotte area, but you'll notice it's not completely out of the woods. 30% chance of seeing damaging winds. What are damaging winds? Typically anything over 30 miles per hour that could bring down trees or maybe a weaker structure, something that's made out of thin metal. We're also watching for the possibility of some hail, and that all factors into what it is that we will be watching for as those line of storms come through. But let's not forget here, before we even talk about some of those outlying cases, could we see a stray tornado? Yeah, maybe. We saw some tornado warnings with this system and has made its way through the Midwest, but of course that is almost to be expected in that neck of the woods. What we really need to keep a close eye on here is heavy rain, which could result in flooding in certain areas and a big lightning threat. Taking a look here at the latest radar scan from the Roanoke radar, you can begin to see just how much lightning is associated with this system. And if I take the radar and I slide to the west and we take a look at the other side of the mountains, you can begin to see we have some thunderstorms moving through this area as well. Johnson City, I'm going to go ahead and circle it here on the map. You'll see right now they've got a strong thunderstorm with lightning coming on through. And if we check out the resortcams.com webcam in Johnson City, Tennessee, where it's currently 83 degrees and that thunderstorm's coming through, there's exactly perfect timing. You can see just how much lightning is coming through with the storm, and that's going to be the big takeaway with a lot of this, because lightning poses a risk as well. And that's one of the things that I think people most often kind of put aside, because it's a form of damaging severe weather, if you will, that is most common. So we almost get used to it. But if you were close enough to hear thunder, you were close enough to get struck by lightning. So anybody who is anywhere near any of these thunderstorms, of course, should be taking shelter inside, and we'll resort to these webcams to kind of keep an eye on it. If you've been watching the Weather Channel over the past few days, they've been practicing what they preach. Some of their correspondents out in the field storm chasing, taking shelter inside as some of these more lightning-intensive electrical storms come on through, because they're not immune to it, we're not immune to it, and certainly that's something we're going to be keeping an eye on. We've even seen it happen with television stations in the past, where of course they've got their big transmitters and they're not immune to lightning strikes as well. So once again, just joining us here, this is a live look from resortcams.com. This is Johnson City, Tennessee, 83 degrees, lots of fuel. It's 10:45 at night, folks, and man, is it hot. And we are watching as some thunderstorms begin to push back into the North Carolina area. So we only have one severe thunderstorm warning that I can see right now, and that's just north of the Knoxville, Tennessee area. But we also want to talk about that flood threat. You can see in the Virginia area as we make our way back into West Virginia, and even kind of sneaking over the border here, as you look just south of Dansville, we have what the National Weather Service has issued as a flash flood warning. Flash flood warning meaning that we've had a lot of rainfall in this area, and so we are experiencing areas of flooding. Of course, a watch means that the conditions are favorable, a warning meaning that it is taking place right now. So let's take a closer look at this and see exactly what it was that prompted the National Weather Service to issue this flash flood warning, which is going to be in effect and continue here for much of the overnight hours. This one being issued by the Blacksburg office of the National Weather Service. And of course, it was those clusters of thunderstorms that we've been telling you about. Heavy rain falling across the area is flash flooding expected to begin shortly. So we're talking about Danville, Halifax, and we're talking about rainfall amounts of 1 to 2 inches possible in the warned area. So let's go back out to the radar image here, and we can get a better idea of just how much rain has fallen, because if we put this into motion, you'll notice that main line of thunderstorms has already pushed through and is now making its way towards Greensboro and Durham and Raleigh. There's still more rain back behind it, but we can get a sense for just how much rain has fallen if we kind of do radar estimated rainfall rates here. We can to see exactly how much rain it is that we are talking about. And you'll notice there are some heavier pockets too, so we wouldn't be it wouldn't be all that surprising to see if we get more of these advisories and warnings as we go on through the rest of the evening. So let's go ahead and look at this. Again, these are radar estimates. 3 inches of rain south of Danville. This is into the North Carolina part of this area. But as we make our way back up into Virginia, you can see about 3 inches or so. Certainly not the worst case scenario here. As we make our way up towards Lynchburg, kind of the southern area there, you'll see areas where radar estimates about 5 inches of rain have fallen, and you can see even higher amounts as we make our way back into West Virginia, into the mountains there, about 6 inches of rain radar estimated. What do we mean by radar estimated? Well, keep in mind the radar is scanning some of the upper layers of the atmosphere. It's not scanning the surface per se, so it's trying to take into consideration just how much rain is up in those layers of the atmosphere, and so we can probably get a little bit of a different picture, and maybe a better picture, if we switch radar sources here and show you all of the action right now in the Raleigh area. We can see if we can get the same amount of rain totals and kind of confirm what we're thinking by checking 2 different radars, looking at this from 2 different angles, and we are seeing about the same thing. About 3 inches of rain have fallen. We don't have a warning here as you make your way towards Henderson. You will see also about 3 inches of rain have fallen. Let's widen this back out, kind of set the scene here again as we wait to see exactly how much power these storms will have. But you can already see we do have kind of a main line that is making its way now into parts of Greensboro, going to be into Durham, and not too far after that, Raleigh. Well, we do have some action out ahead of it, and we even have some outside of my area here in Charlotte, North Carolina, where we will use the TWR and kind of really zero in on what it is we are seeing in the Charlotte atmosphere here. Well, we are seeing a little bit of activity out ahead of the line, and while these aren't very large in nature, you can see some areas of stronger thunderstorms. You might be hearing some noise in the background as some of our other guys are at their computer stations as well, keeping a close eye on this, including our friend Scotty, who is up in the North Carolina mountains, where not too long there's going to be some rain headed their way as well.
Yeah, hey James, I hope you guys can hear me. I don't have my my microphone with me tonight, so it may be a little muddled, but yeah, kind of just got caught in here to the office watching this line of thunderstorms moved in. Kind of surprised, honestly, James. We went to an enhanced risk of severe weather for our area here along the Interstate 40 corridor up into the mountains, so that kind of got everyone's attention, damage and winds being the biggest concern. So that's what we're watching right now. The National Weather Service has issued some strong storm statements for our mountain counties for winds 45, 50, 55 mile per hour, and very vivid lightning, constant lightning. I know that Ricky and James, I'm sorry if you already covered this. I've been in and out. So I know Ricky's been talking about the constant lightning up there in the Bristol area. So it's going to be a stormy period here for the next few hours here in the Western Carolinas. And it looks like it may have enough energy to maintain itself all the way into the Charlotte area and even the upstate of South Carolina.
And that would be a bit of a change in the forecast, because while we didn't rule out any stray storms to come into the Charlotte area, this was something we really expected to weaken a bit as it came into our region, and what energy it had would kind of dissipate over the northern half of the state. But certainly this does not look like something that is weakening all too quickly.
No, not at all. Looking at some of the perimeters earlier today, pretty impressed. You know, it's kind of been as I like to say, it was kind of like a fish flopping out of water the past couple of days. You know, all this potential of seeing some severe weather, and it just kind of bypassed most of us here in the Western Carolinas. I know the eastern part of the state got some severe storms, but yeah, a big change for us here in the mountains and foothills. I just seen another strong storm statement out now for the Buncombe County area, Madison County, so just north of Asheville. Storm's going to be moving into that area. And the biggest concern right now is the potential for some damage and wind gust.
Absolutely, and one of the best ways to know whether or not you are really going to be in the bullseye for any of these damaging wind gusts is if you watch for a severe thunderstorm warning to be issued. Because if you're not familiar, a severe thunderstorm warning has two main criteria. And although we've talked a lot about heavy rain and lightning, those are not criteria for the National Weather Service to issue a severe thunderstorm warning. Heavy rain leading to flooding, and lightning, of course, has its own dangers that should not be excluded. But the things that you really need to watch for, if you're in one side of these yellow polygons, and I've moved into Tennessee now because this is actually our nearest severe thunderstorm warning just north of Knoxville. Severe thunderstorm warning means we have 60-mile-per-hour damaging winds and or the possibility of quarter-size hail as we begin to see that particular severe thunderstorm warning drop off. What we are also seeing, and I'm waiting for them to kind of appear on my radar scope here, again, that flooding concern, and we have also advisories up that are not on the screen here for parts of the Raleigh area and then out to the east where you're already seeing some of that heavy rain that is moving through Rocky Mount and Wilson down towards Greenville.
Yeah, and James, I don't know if you covered it a little bit earlier, but we actually did have a tornado warning out for the central part of the state around, I think it was about 5:30 or so. I don't think anything was confirmed. It was just outside of Burlington, just north of Siler City.
It was somewhere roughly in here, was it not?
Yeah, it was somewhere in that area. So I'm not aware of any touchdown or anything, but it kind of just show you that the potential is there. Very, 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 very small potential for some storms rotating, but nonetheless, we can't rule that out either.
Looking at the National Weather Service storm reports from earlier, we do have one for Chatham County about 6:25 that was quarter-size hail. That's a hail of about an inch. So we don't have anything confirmed from the National Weather Service or anybody that was on the ground regarding damage caused by a tornado or other wind event, but we do have a report from that neck of the woods of inch-size hail. What we do have is, as we make our way towards about that area or so, Scotty, in towards Ashboro there, we do have a report from just before the 10 o'clock hour of several trees down along near the Zoo Parkway. We're also getting reports of power outages in and around that area, and being that it's from 9:50, just about an hour or so ago, I would be rather guessing here that is probably this line that came on through, which doesn't look all that oppressive right now when you look at that big line coming through the north, but you don't necessarily have to be hit by that main line in order to feel the effects. So that is something we will keep an eye on. And matter of fact, we can switch modes here and go from reflectivity to velocity to kind of get a vague idea of what the winds are. And if you're not too familiar with how radars work, and we talked about it a little bit before, is we're getting a slice of the upper atmosphere. So this isn't necessarily what's reaching the surface, but you can see that even some of these smaller rain cells that are out ahead of the main line here as we look towards Robins Air Force Base, about 20 miles per hour or so. And that's a good little gust. But even those little guys out there, one of the things to watch for is they bring heavy rain to some of these areas. Of course, heavy rain is something to keep in mind when you get this main line that's going to be coming through into an area that's already experienced rain. So as this is making its way kind of south and east here, as it hits these areas that have already experienced rain, if they have any trees that haven't fallen but are kind of in a weakened state, either from an earlier wind event or from just being in saturated ground, they may fall more easily than they would have as if they didn't get hit with an earlier thunderstorm or shower. So that is something to kind of keep an eye on here as we were watching some of these smaller storms out ahead of the main line. And again, the main line there you're seeing at the top of your screen coming through Greensboro and Durham. So we don't have any active warnings out right now for thunderstorms or even tornadoes in our neck of the woods. That's certainly good. But again, you're seeing a green box here at the top of the screen. This is a flash flood warning. One of the big things you also need to keep in mind is if you're in an area that gets a prolonged period of rain and you live in an area that's prone to flooding, or even if you live in an area that's not prone to flooding, we're going to be watching for some of this excess runoff. I'm going to walk you through some of the storm reports right now, and I know Scotty is with his colleagues there as they begin to monitor in their neck of the woods as they prepare for a storm or two to kind of make its way over the mountains here. The main line coming across the mountains, coming across the Blue Ridge, out of Johnson City, Tennessee, back back down now into the Boone area. We are seeing just south of Mountain City some really heavy thunderstorms here that are moving again to the south and east, moving into the Boone and Blowing Rock area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip back over. This is the Johnson City camera that we've been showing you, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take you inside my apartment here. Oh, lightning strike, and that's a big thing we're talking about as well. As I switch our resorts camera, I'm going to move this now. Resortscameras.com also has a network of cameras that include kind of the areas up where we are watching right now, into the Boone, the Blowing Rock areas, and that's of course, where our friend Scotty is. So I'm pulling up right now King Street in Boone, where it is not yet raining. As you can see here on Doppler radar, not yet raining, but not too far off. So things are pretty quiet right now. And also, take a look at the trees right here, the leaves right in front of the shot, right before it turned there. Pretty quiet and still right now, but I'm willing to bet that if we come back to this in a few more minutes, we're going to be looking at a much different story, because that line of storms right now is only a few minutes out of Boone, and if we switch this again from reflectivity to velocity, we can get a vague idea of what type of winds we're going to be seeing here. What I also may do, because this is the Knoxville radar, which is on the other side of the mountains there, is I'm going to switch over to maybe either Greenville, Spartanburg seems to be getting some good readings, or of course we can also look at the National Weather Service radar out of Blacksburg in the Roanoke area. But since we have GSP up right now, we'll start there. We've got velocity up. We're going to go ahead and put our inspector on, and you can see just outside of Boone right now, we do have in the upper atmosphere 35, 45, 40 mile per hour winds here that will be coming out of Beach Lake into Blowing Rock in not too long here. And so we could begin to see some of those trees blowing in some of the shots we are looking at. But again, 60 mile per hour winds are threshold for severe thunderstorm warning. So while this is nothing to really take all too lightly, we do not have a warning on it right now. But you can kind of see on the leading edge there of the storm, not only do we have the rain, but we have the wind to contend with as well. Is that a concern for you guys tonight, Scotty?
Yeah, I think wind's a big concern, because up here also, I don't know, we're not in a major drought yet, but it's been really dry out here. So the ground's really hardened up, and the trees have not been able to get all the water they need. So they become weakened and stuff like that. So, severe wind criteria is 58 miles per hour, but if you get a 50, 55 mile per hour gust, that could be enough to cause some trees to come down. So that is a big concern. Also, flash flooding. I know it's been really dry, but if you get 2 to 3 inches of rain in no time, that could cause some issues as well. So the wind is probably our biggest threat, our concern. But then again, also some of that heavier rain, which we need the rain. So we're not going to be picky, but we just hope it doesn't turn into any flooding concerns throughout the area.
And drought, a great consideration as well. Talking about what we were talking about before is, if you have a tree that's in a weakened state, drought being one of those conditions. If a tree is not securely in the ground, that could be one of the reasons why something may come down that otherwise would not have come down. So again, we were looking here at Boone, still 75 degrees here at 11 o'clock Eastern time as they prepare for a line of storms to come on through. Trees still very still, not a lot of people out and about, and that is some good news here. Probably not into the heat of tourism season yet. We don't have a ton of people out onto the streets, and that will be good because in the next few minutes, I'm really willing to bet that we're going to be looking at a much different picture here as this storm prepares to come into Boone. As we step away from that for just a second, because I do not want to neglect other parts of the state here, and kind of just want to give you a quick tour of what it is we are looking at here as we prepare for that storm to move into the North Carolina high country, kind of the brunt of that storm where we have that camera. We are going to take a look here, and you will see even along the coast here tonight, we are watching for some strong thunderstorms. They're again moving to the south and east as you look on the screen here, or if you're not able to look, I'll narrate it for you. We do have some of these stronger storms right now just north of the Greenville area, so not down towards New Bern, but we do have heavy rain currently falling in Wilson, just out of Rocky Mount, and back towards Killdivil Hills, where more of these will be moving towards the Outer Banks there in just a few minutes, which of course is something to keep an eye on. And of course, we have Interstate 95, we have Interstate 80 85 in the area, and now have a line of pretty strong storms getting set to kind of move right into Durham. You can already see here the storm system has moved into Greensboro. We're monitoring for any storm reports there that might come through, because you can see we kind of have a little bit of a leading edge on this storm right here, which probably means that I'm willing to speculate, and we'll get it confirmed here in just a second, that we might have some pretty nice winds with this as well. Radar getting a hard time getting a reading out of there, so we're going to switch this up to Roanoke here to see if we can get a little bit of a better picture at some of the winds that are coming out of Reidsville and down towards Greensboro here in the next few minutes. So let's go ahead and put that inspector on. And you can kind of see some heavy radar indicated winds here up into the 40-mile-per-hour range. I think I saw a brief 50-mile-per-hour range. And I always like to remind people, and I know we keep talking about it, but this is, again, up in the upper layers of the atmosphere. So certainly something that is going to be seen and felt down on the lower layers of the atmosphere, or down at the surface where we are. Well, right now we are taking measurements from about 8,000 feet up. So these are radar estimated winds, and we're really going to have to kind of couple that with ground observations from the airport and other areas to really get confirmation for what it is exactly that is being seen on the ground. But again, this is coming in now just into Greensboro. This is not a warned storm of any type. This is not a severe thunderstorm, but this is a very heavy and strong thunderstorm. You can see kind of the reflectivity here as we get into some of those darker reds, and even up very briefly a little bit up into the pink. And what I want to do for you here is there are certain measurements we take to get a strength of a storm, and one of them is enhanced echo tops, because if you think of an afternoon thunderstorm that you see outside, sometimes they billow up into the atmosphere. So as a storm gets going, it pushes up into the atmosphere and gets taller and taller and taller. And generally speaking, the taller the storm, the stronger it is. So what we can do is we can look at what's called enhanced echo tops. Echo tops being the echoes that we're getting from the top of these storms. And you can see, and although this radar image is a few minutes old, we are into a color and a shading here that is not all too foreign with strong thunderstorms, as we're looking at the top of these storms about 40,000 feet, but certainly would still have room to grow if it decided to do so and the atmosphere allowed it to do so. So we're not talking about the strongest of storms here, but certainly nothing to laugh at if you're in the Greensboro area. Matter of fact, if you bear with me for just a second, and I'll put my ugly mug back up on the screen, I do apologize, we can probably pull up some DOT cameras from the Greensboro area and get a better picture. But before we do that, this is a look at that Boone camera. You can see right there at that street light beginning to rain now in parts of the North Carolina high country as we prepare for this line to kind of come marching across. So let's go ahead. We'll switch over to my ugly mug so you don't have to watch me too much web browsing here. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull up the North Carolina Department of Transportation because they have a network of cameras across the state that we can kind of peer into and get a sense for what is happening in different parts of the country, and so different parts of the state, and we can do that without violating any copyright laws, which is always super helpful. So bear with me just a second here. I'm going to pull up a camera that is not too far outside the metro area here on the north side of town. I'll go ahead and pop my screen up for you because that did not come in as large as I was hoping it, but we're looking at the north side of Greensboro here, and we're looking at some fairly wet surfaces, although this is a still picture. North Carolina Department of Transportation only puts still pictures online, so we're having to kind of infer from the still pictures what it is we're looking at, but you can already see some of those clouds in the atmosphere here as we begin to kind of poke around different parts of Greensboro. And as we make our way out towards the airport, again, another shot there of the sky, which is always helpful for us from a weather perspective when we're trying to use these cameras to not only look at traffic and conditions on the ground, but also up into the sky. So we do have some wet roadway conditions here, and that's really our main concern at the moment, because we do not have any severe thunderstorm warnings out in portions of North Carolina at the moment. But these storms, warning or not, could bring down some loose trees, resulting in some power outages. Also had a history a little bit earlier of hail and some wind damage in different parts of the state, and actually, frankly, different parts of the country. So let's go ahead and pop radar back up on the screen here. We're looking at Greensboro as one of the metro areas right now as we get a new image in from the Roanoke radar, where we're beginning to see some of that rain move in. we were looking at some cameras here. We're going to revisit them in just a few minutes because those North Carolina Department of Transportation cameras, as widespread as they are, do take a few minutes to update. And I've just drawn a line there roughly showing you where Interstate 85 is, of course, a major thoroughfare. So we'll wait for the storm to kind of get to that area, and we can revisit some of those cameras. I'll go ahead and outline 85 for you here as we get ready to watch this leading edge of severe thunderstorms kind of come into Greensboro, Durham, and eventually into Raleigh. But before we get too far, let's take another look here at the North Carolina mountains and into the Boone area, where we do have a strong thunderstorm, especially for this hour of the evening. Pretty decent looking storm here, getting ready to kind of move into the Boone area. So if we go back to our resortscam.com camera, which is on King Street, let me refresh that for you here. We can begin to see rain falling. We'll see it again in a minute.
Hey James.
Go ahead, Scotty.
I was going to tell you, we just stood outside, and it is constant. Our office is in Marion, here on the. You probably pull it up on the radar, and we're looking to the northwest towards Boone and Newland and places like that. And it is constant lightning. And one thing we notice is we're starting to see a lot of cumulus clouds really start to build and billow. So that's telling us, as it's coming up the mountain and now down the mountain, that those updrafts are going to be able to sustain themselves as we start to see visually the cumulus clouds continue to build. So normally, the mountains kind of cut down on some of the energy of those storms, but it does look like they're going to be able to sustain themselves outside of the mountains as they come off the mountain. Normally when they come off the mountain and moving out of a northwest direction, it kind of dries up the storms, but there's enough energy and moisture around that these storms are really starting to build as they come off the mountain. And you can kind of tell that if you go on radar right now, just outside of Blowing Rock towards the community of Blackson and Deep Gap, there's a new updraft that has developed there. There's a new updraft developing in the Wilkes County area. Also a new updraft developing just outside of Mars Hill over towards the Buncombe County area. So these storms are, as they're coming off the mountains now, they're really starting to sustain themselves, and actually the updrafts are keeping the storm healthy. So that's something to watch as it comes into the foothills and the Piedmont of the North Carolina area, especially places like Marion and Morganton, Hickory, Lincolnton, Gastonia, Shelby, Charlotte, Statesville. They're so warm outside. I mean, it's still 82 degrees, I think, here in the foothills. So it's still warm out there. A lot of energy to work with, and it could be a long stormy night for a lot of us.
11:10 now. 10 minutes ago, a lot of counties fell out of or had their severe thunderstorm watch expired, which is interesting when you consider not too long ago the Storm Prediction Center kind of put us into that slight and enhanced risk. Did that catch you off guard that watch was expired for counties right here on the screen right now?
It was. It caught me off guard in two ways. With the enhanced going out for especially our area. Our area's never been in a severe thunderstorm watch, and several of the foothill counties are in the enhanced area from the SPC. So for a watch not to be issued on an enhanced, that's kind of head scratching. And then it is kind of different to see that the severe thunderstorm watches are being canceled in the enhanced area. So yeah, kind of a head scratcher there. Not sure of the process of that, but as you're showing here in Boone, it looks like the wind and the rain's really starting to kick up.
Yeah, as we speculated here, we're beginning to see those trees, which just minutes ago were still there in Boone, beginning to move now as the storm comes on through. And of course, National Weather Service, our friends over there, doing a great job tonight, keeping an eye on all of this. Several long days for them and more to come. So by no means are we trying to speculate or throw them under the bus, but Scotty, myself, and meteorologists and other folks in the weather and emergency management community look at this to try to figure out what exactly the atmosphere is doing, because they are the experts in this field. So we try to read into a little bit of what's on their minds as they issue or cancel or expire some of these storms. New report just in from Kentucky as we look back off behind these storms. Sometimes these storm reports lag a little bit. They takes a little while for the public or other folks to call them in, or in some cases National Weather Service actually goes out and verifies them. But multiple trees down in parts of Kentucky and Tennessee, and that's even what we've already seen in parts of Virginia and North Carolina. Carolina, where we have numerous trees reported down along the North Carolina and Virginia line, kind of just north of the Raleigh area and the Durham area, where some storms came through just a short time ago and already weakened and saturated some grounds there. We have what the National Weather Service calls special weather statements. Again, we talked a little bit earlier about the criteria for severe thunderstorms: 60-mile-per-hour winds, quarter-size hail. But sometimes storms just like this get your attention, get my attention, get Scotty's attention. So the National Weather Service recently, in the last few years, started issuing special weather statements, kind of a heads up. We were watching this. It is strong, may impede your travel. Nothing to be overly concerned about, but we are watching for some strong storms to move into Avery and Burke Mountains, Caldwell Mountains, Madison, and I'm just naming a few of these because if I were to read all of these off, Scotty would be here all night, but I guess that's partially what we're doing already, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And to kind of what I like to show those as is kind of, I'm going to move my computer video update, but what, that way you guys can hear me for a little bit.
So I thought you were taking us outside to give us a live report.
Well, I would, but our light's not working out there right now, so you wouldn't be able to see much. But special weather service is what we're talking about. What I like to classify those, they're almost not really severe thunderstorm warning criteria yet, but that's just kind of the precursor where, hey, this storm's really getting strong. It could produce 50-mile-per-hour winds, 40 to 50-mile-per-hour winds. So it's kind of that, just be on alert, just know that this storm's coming, and it has the potential of really growing into a severe thunderstorm. So that's something we'll have to watch. And I can see you have the enhanced up now. And again, for the life of me, I don't know why. And like you said just a little bit ago, we're friends with the Storm Prediction Center people, friends with the National Weather Service. One thing a lot of people don't know is Storm Prediction Center actually is the ones that issues these watches, the first watch, and then the offices around the watch has the chance to add additional counties if they want to. And so these guys are based out of Norman, Oklahoma. So that, I don't know. Like I said, I love them to death, but sometimes North Carolinians know our weather just a little bit better. Does that make sense, James? We kind of know the
ins and the outs, yeah.
The ins and the outs. So.
Right, and you get to know kind of how these local parts of not only our atmosphere but also our terrain, like you were talking about just a few minutes ago, with those mountains, and kind of how we are seeing tonight those thunderstorms living on as they push over those mountains, which in some cases in the past, those mountains have been the end of the storms.
Right. Yeah, and I'm just looking, the biggest threat out of these are going to be the damage and winds, and we're issued under a 30% chance. Now, it's not a 30% chance of damage and winds, it's a 30% chance higher that we're going to see damage and winds when these storms move in. So that's the biggest threat. Again, lightning, a lot of lightning with these storms. The sky is really to our northwest is illuminating with lightning. So that's probably going to be a big attention getter as well. I like to say on our weather company, we do social media updates and stuff, and I issue scared kid alerts because it's bedtime now, kids are sleeping, and then all of a sudden they get woke up by lightning and thunder. So I assume that we're probably going to see that tonight. A lot of kids wanting to go see mom and dad while they've been asleep and been woke up by the storms, and also the pets as well. They don't like the thunder either, so that's something else. So again, you can see in Boone, it looks like the wind's blowing pretty good up there with some heavy rain falling. But I haven't seen much lightning up there, but I don't know how easily it would be to see the lightning on these cameras. So
we can use radar scope a little bit there to help us out as we get a closer look at the street level and kind of see some of that rain there falling in front of the lights. But as we pull up, actually that's a traffic camera that I had ready to go from the Greensboro area, where you can see some of the rain in that motorist's headlights. As we go back out to radar scope, you can see we do have quite a bit of lightning. I would say not as much as we saw before or with other parts of the storm, but we'll wait to see if it cycles back up now that it's clearing those mountains, kind of beginning to come down on that downslope, we could maybe begin to see more lightning with this storm.
Yeah, I agree with you. We've not seen as much lightning. Let me. I've got my GR3 pulled up here. Normally does a good job of telling me how many strikes. So right now it's picking up, and this is area wide. This is just not in the western part of the state. This is for the GSP region. 18,817 strikes of lightning. So that's still quite a lot of lightning, but not as much as we've seen the activity really kind of wane off a little bit here in the mountains. But it'd be interesting to see, as I told you just a minute ago, the cumulus will start to develop off of the mountains. So that's going to be interesting to see if that continues, just how much energy we have to work with here over the next few hours.
And I think that's a perfect segue just for a moment to step away from your part of the state and move back out towards Greensboro and Durham and Raleigh and check in on the storms there as they begin to come into those metro areas and also begin to come into Interstate 85 because we'll give those storms in the western part of the state a second to kind of catch their breath after coming over the mountains and give Scotty a moment there to check in on what he's working on in his office. But you can see on the screen here, I would be rather to guess, and this is an unofficial estimate because we do not have a radar count on this screen, but based on what we were seeing a few moments ago, this does look like we are getting a little bit less lightning. What does that tell us? Not a whole lot officially, but unofficially, we can kind of say, okay, these storms might be weakening a little. Again, that's kind of an unofficial speculation. We still have a ton of lightning on the screen, but I would fathom to guess it's a little less than we did before. What we can definitely tell you, and you would be able to tell us if you were in these neck of the woods, and I think Scotty will get it before I do, is after these storms come through, remember, one of the key ingredients for storms is the heat we've been having. So after these storms come on through, you can expect to see, and I really hope this doesn't crash my computer like it did yesterday. There we go. Cool. Screen share. Take a look here from our friends at Time Warner Cable News. Look at those greens across the top of the screen. Those are cooler temperatures here as of 11:05 already being observed in parts like Greensboro and Raleigh, Greenville. 70 degrees is still fairly warm, I would say, but much cooler than other parts of the state, including right here in Charlotte, where it's still 86 degrees outside, and I would be fathomed to guess it's at least that hot in my apartment, where the AC doesn't quite work as well as I would like it to work. So we will keep an eye on that, because that's one of the things we can kind of look forward to on the other side of these storms, is it won't kind of be as hot as it was today. Not saying we've got a cold snap coming, but it won't be as hot as it was today, and that is certainly some good news. I do have I believe this is a new storm report. It came in just a few minutes ago for Allegheny County. This was observed at 10:02. Thunderstorm winds brought down numerous trees in the community of Allegheny County, North Carolina, kind of right up there, Interstate 77 as you make your way into Virginia. And so we'll watch for some of these storm reports to come on through. Again, there's a slight delay because, like we talked about, when these storms come on through, you really step inside. Emergency management maybe won't be out patrolling, and they'll go back out after the storms kind of subside a little. And so we're beginning to get some of those storm reports in now as they become concerned. Scotty, are you in a position in your office where you can tell us a little bit what it is we're looking at? He may not be. That's okay. We're just looking at Scotty's screen here. Hey, Scotty.
I had my microphone muted, so let me
No
get back
worries.
to
I know you will have other obligations tonight as well in your office there. So if you need to step aside, that's absolutely fine. And I wasn't sure exactly what it is you were looking at here on your screen.
Yeah, so this is the SPC Meso Analysis Scale. This is updated every hour or so, and this is what we're looking at right now. This is changes in CAPE, and CAPE basically is convective available potential energy, or thunderstorm fuel, is what we like to refer it to. And so you can see these pockets of red right here. That's 1,000 joules of CAPE. But right here in the western Carolinas, we're seeing some negative numbers. We call that SIN. So basically, it's the storms are going to have to overcome that to kind of regenerate as they come off the mountains. Right now it's negative 100, 200, so that's feasible. That can be overdone or overcome. So that's something we'll have to watch as you look out here in the eastern part of the states. They're negative 300, 400. So um, what I would assume that would be is the storms that rolled through there earlier kind of used up some of the energy out there. So that's something we'll watch. Let's see. I'm going to pull up one more thing here.
And that might not be something, Scotty, we would see if this situation was playing out in the middle of the day, where the sun and the heat and the energy would kind of help refuel the atmosphere a little bit more than we're going to get here after sunset.
Exactly, exactly, yeah. And this is kind of more broader view. As you can see, a good pocket of 500 joules of CAPE up here in the Tri-Cities area, also coming into just north of Raleigh. So we'll have to watch that. This is a page that I love to use. I don't really share it a lot because it's a little bit more technical than a lot of people probably care to see. It's something that James and I are weather weenies, or meteorologists as us. We like to look at this and study this, but don't really bring it out a lot just because it's kind of a little bit harder to read and kind of give you an idea of what's going on. This is the precipitable water. This is something else I wanted to point out. Look at these rates over here, James. That's 2.1 inches of rain. So basically, if the atmosphere was moistened up as much as it could, and we got that really heavy rain to come down, be brought down to the surface, which we're doing tonight with these strong storms, we're looking at 2.12 inches of rain per hour in the eastern part of the state. And those numbers really don't drop off much as you go off to the western part of the state. Just here outside of Tennessee, up in northern Kentucky, there's a 2-inch rainfall rate. Up in Boone right now, 1.7, 1.8 inches of rain. If we could really get all of that rain coming out of the clouds, and we're really moist out there. You feel that humidity tonight. And those storms are really starting to bring down the rain and the wind. So again, that's why the flash flooding threat could also be present if we get these storms to train over the same areas. And what I mean by train is it's a storm after storm after storm, kind of like a train track. You get train car after train car after train car. So that could also be a concern up here, especially I would say, James, over in the central and eastern part of the state. Those are some high numbers up there. So I do believe earlier you did display at least one flash flood warning for one of the counties over there in the central part of the state. So that's something else to watch. Thankfully for our friends who are watching in South Carolina, you don't really have much going on right now. This is mainly at Virginia, Tennessee, North Carolina things. So again, we're going to go back to our CAPE values. We're still got a good pocket here, but we're going to have to overcome some of the sin if we really want to see the severe storms really take off. And James, that may kind of be our answer to the question we had a little bit earlier: is why did they allow the severe thunderstorm watch to drop? These sin values are quite high over here in the central and eastern part of the state, and my opinion is that's probably because of the storms that moved through earlier. So that's something to watch as well as we go through the evening here for the next few hours, and just see how these storms react as they come off the mountains.
Great insight there, Scotty. And I've taken the radar scope and I've pushed it in to the Winston-Salem area, where we actually have one pocket of storms. And you beg to differ here, but I would say over the last few scans are actually intensifying a little bit. So like you said, overall things are dropping a lot, but we do have a couple pockets here where I think these storms are getting the opportunity to kind of get a hold of some of the lasting heat that might be in the atmosphere here. So although the main line is kind of back off this way, you'll notice if you watch over the last few radar scans, and that one area I have circled there, and I'll kind of circle another one here as you make your way towards Statesville, you can begin to see some more storms beginning to prosper a little bit, as we have, of course, lots of atmospheric conditions working here that we'll keep an eye on. Because we do, again, still have, although that severe thunderstorm watch was dropped, as Scotty mentioned, we are still technically, and we will wait to see if this gets changed at all, and this is what kind of prompted us to get on tonight, under a enhanced or, and in some parts, a slight risk of seeing some of this severe weather. Again, the main threat, as Scotty said, would be winds in some of these concentrated areas, especially kind of in the northern half of North Carolina up along that Virginia border. Again, you can see it there in the orange. That's enhanced. Yellow being slight. I'm working my way down the scale now back into blue, green, which is marginal. Again, we're working on a scale here of about 0 to 5, enhanced being about a 3. And this kind of snuck up on all of us, I think, a little bit earlier in the evening, just before we began tracking some of these storms. But again, we do not have a watch or even a warning to speak about right now up on this portion of the screen, which was not initially, I think, at least speaking for myself, I was expecting a few more polygons to be out here once we saw that Storm Prediction Center kind of change the outlook for the state. But we don't have any severe thunderstorm warnings to talk about. But as Scotty mentioned just a few minutes ago, and you can see it there outlined in green, if you take a look at the North Carolina-Virginia border there in Danville, that is a flash flood warning that will be in effect for several more hours. Those things are typically issued for several hours because what happens is you get a lot of rainfall, and in this case we're talking about 3 inches or so of rain that fell in this area. It's hitting an area that maybe already had some rain earlier today. The ground may already be saturated, so now we have another 3 inches of rain has fallen or so, and it's going to take time for that to run off. So flash flood warning means that flash flooding, which is kind of a very urgent onset of water, is either likely occurring or may begin occurring shortly. That differs than a flash flood watch, which may be issued for a broad area, maybe out ahead of a line of storms. We don't have it in this case, but it could be issued to kind of say we're going to be monitoring for lots of rain to kind of fall in an area. And although it's not up on the app here, the bottom tier kind of our flooded bulletins, our array of bulletins that the National Weather Service may issue, would be a flood advisory, kind of saying we may have some surface runoff to deal with. We may have some flooding in areas that are prone to flooding, as opposed to a flash flood warning where you may get flooding in an area not prone to flooding. So parts of Raleigh and off to their east, as you kind of look there on the screen where I've got it circled, that is under a flood advisory because it is still raining in many of those areas, and they had rain come through earlier. And we can do, using the radar, kind of estimate just how much rain came through, and you're beginning to see some pockets there of yellow or so on the map. So that would be about 3 inches or so of rain. So that is probably why the National Weather Service felt they needed to issue that flood advisory for parts of the state. It's 11:30. I'm James Brierton in Charlotte. We have Scotty, who is up in Marion in western part of North Carolina, a fellow panelist here with you on the Carolina Weather Group, on with you here on a special Thursday night edition of our YouTube show here. Of course, we're normally with you on Wednesday nights with experts analysis on some of the things that are really happening in the weather community, but we felt it was important to come on tonight and provide an added service for many of you who follow us, or maybe some of you who are finding us here for the first time, as we are looking at some strong thunderstorms kind of rolling through parts of our home area here in North Carolina, but of course also back up into Virginia and Tennessee, in other parts of the state. It's not showing up here on the screen because it's considered a special marine warning, which is a little bit different than a severe thunderstorm, but for the sake of kind of giving you an idea of where some of the heaviest rain is occurring right now. This is Swan Quarter. We are looking at the coastline here of North Carolina to the east of Greenville is under a special marine warning until midnight, so for another half an hour or so. Excuse me, for this cluster of storms that kind of came on through there. This is something that is issued a lot of time for boaters, but since we do have communities along the shore here, and the warning does include that, I kind of want to just give everybody a heads up that you will be seeing frequent lightning, as we can see there on the screen, and also gusty winds. And if you are living right along the water, or if for some reason you are out on the water at this hour in this conditions, which is obviously not favorable, we're watching for things like high waves and heavy rain. So boaters should seek, if they haven't already for whatever reason, should seek safe harbor immediately until this storm passes. And obviously we're dealing with quite a few number of storms here, as we are looking at what I have circled there on the screen is considered a special marine warning. Growing up on Long Island, New York, we had way more of those than we get here in my new adopted hometown of Charlotte, North Carolina, where even here in our neck of the woods, we're beginning to see as you make your way out into Union and Anson counties, a few thunderstorms with a few lightning strikes beginning to pop up here. But again, most of the main activity right now is to the north of the Charlotte area. Iredell County seeing it right now. You can kind of see it there, just beginning to push into the northern part of the state. This is where Interstate 40 and Interstate 77 come together. And this goes back to what we were talking about just a few moments ago as we switch radar sources here to the Raleigh radar. You're beginning to see some of the heaviest rain right now. These are strong thunderstorms moving through areas and out of areas like Winston-Salem, Greensboro, which are almost out of the front line here, but then the front line moving into areas like Durham and Raleigh. And again, we're watching for some of these little cells out ahead of it here, which kind of give us a good indication of the type of fuel that's in the atmosphere. If they can get going out ahead of the storm, we know that there's some fuel out there, but it's also kind of a catch-22 for the atmosphere because those storms could end up using some of that cape that Scotty was talking about, or some of that heat that's out there in the atmosphere. So we'll watch for some of that. We just got a new report in from just north of the North Carolina border as you make your way into Bedford County, Virginia, where they observed 3.5 inches of rain. So we are talking about a lot of rain in some necks of the woods, and I would fathom to guess that it'll be one of the biggest things we'll keep an eye on here, because you can see just how much rain it is we are dealing with on the screen. So even if you don't see hail tonight or wind damage, we will be watching for some very heavy pockets of rain that will be rolling through, and that's why the National Weather Service, and you can see some of those bright green boxes there on your screen, have issued some flash flood warnings. That 3.5 inches of rain, Bedford County, this is just outside of Lynchburg. So if I make my way a little bit north of Roanoke, and you can probably see it here, and I think it's probably right in the area of that flash flood warning. They observed, as of 11:30, just minutes ago, 3.5 inches of rain from this system that pushed on through. And I can, if you bear with me just a second, as I go into the settings of radar scope, if we switch this so we can get a few more frames out of it, you can kind of see the motion of the storms a little bit better, and you'll be able to see as those storms pushed on through. I don't know if we're going to be able to pull it back to show you the whole evening, and I really doubt we would with 20 frames, and frames coming in every about 7 minutes or so. You'll at least get an idea of just how much rain there moved across portions of Virginia, and that's kind of one of the threats we'll keep an eye on here for northern parts of North Carolina. Here it comes up the radar. Lots of data to load here, and you can kind of see some of those heavy areas of saturated rain that, although the front line still, again, making its way through Greensboro now into parts of the central parts of North Carolina, we still have rain back off behind it, producing lightning as well. And you can see it right there in the center of your screen where some of those flash flood warnings are out. One of the things that I think is really going to catch my eye, and is going to catch yours as well, is how much things will cool off on the back side of this system as it comes on through. Matter of fact, you can see Roanoke now out of the rain there, where the temperature has dropped to 68 degrees as of the observation at 11 o'clock from what I imagine, and I'm not familiar with, but I imagine is probably an airport observation, as many of them are. So once this line kind of comes on through, we can begin to see some of that cooling on down. Let's take a quick change here of source, and let's go back to our friends at resortcams.com, where they've got cameras up in the North Carolina mountains. And that camera, that's too much sunshine for me. I don't know about you, but at 11:30 at night, I don't think we should be seeing that much sunshine. But let's check back in King Street and Boone. We were looking at this as the line was coming through, and let's see if things have calmed down at all, if they've kind of come through that line of thunderstorms, which again is not considered severe, but is certainly going to catch your attention. And then, to borrow a phrase from our friend Scotty there, you could have what he likes to call a scared kid warning, I believe is what he called it, which is when the kids go off to bed and they hear that lightning and thunder. Maybe they wake up in the middle of the night and maybe come running into your bedroom. That is kind of what he was seeing there. And you can see the trees right in the center of that shot have calmed down a bit. They were blowing around quite a bit just a few moments ago, because as we pull the radar back to kind of show you the last hour or so as we've been with you here on YouTube, you can see that line of thunderstorms kind of come through Boone, still moderately strong, not as strong as it was on the other side of the mountains. there's something I want to show you here. And this is what Scotty was talking about. And if you're not familiar with the terrain of North Carolina, I've highlighted the border here between North Carolina and Tennessee, the Blue Ridge Mountains. And that's one of the things that these storms have to overcome. So watch the line as it approaches, the line of thunderstorms approaches the blue line I've drawn in. Pretty strong there, and then they weaken just a little bit. Still pretty strong, but maybe not as strong as they were before. But what we're going to watch for is just how much fuel they've got left in the atmosphere. It's 11:35 at night, and one of the key ingredients of storms is heat. So, you know, we've had a lot of heat, but as they begin to use up what's in the atmosphere, it's not being restored. Obviously, the sun is down, and temperatures this time of night should be a little bit cooler. So as those storms come through and they begin to use what's already there, and you can kind of see it here, I'm manually rolling the radar through. So as we are looking at about 10:45 at night out of Johnson City into the North Carolina high country, the storms begin to interact with those mountains there, and you will see that they weaken a little bit. They become a little less organized. We're looking at more of individual cells of pockets of heavy rain here. But notice in the last few scans, particularly if I can get it to go to that very last scan, we have what appears to be a line of storms trying to come back together. It's too early to say that the storms are really kind of getting their act back together all completely as they were on the other side of the mountains, but certainly something to watch here. We're going to wait for the radar beam to come back around again and update, and we maybe just got one here. This looks to be about 11:35, and it's 11:36 now. It takes just a moment for that radar image to reach us after the National Weather Service is done organizing it. But what I want to do is I want to go down to 6 frames now, because I really want to kind of zero in on what's happening in the atmosphere here just in the last few minutes. We have a radar beam in Greenville, Spartanburg, South Carolina. It is doing a 360-degree circle, 360-degree circle, sending a beam out, slicing the atmosphere. It takes that and it sends it out to us. This happens every 5 minutes or so. And so we only get interval updates. But if you can look here in the last few frames, you'll notice a moment where the storm kind of gets disorganized for a moment and then almost comes back together. And you can see it there as it makes its way towards North Wilkesboro. We kind of, again, have a line of storms. Again, this is not a severe thunderstorm. I do not want to try to scare anybody, but what I'm trying to do here is read the radar, read the atmosphere, and kind of get a sense for how much longer we're going to be watching for this rain to come through, because it wouldn't be out of the question, as we've seen in the past, that these storms hit the mountains, fall apart, and that's kind of the end of it. But we're kind of seeing these storms coming back together here a little bit, and so if they're able to hold on, we could start seeing storms back into parts of the northern Charlotte, North Carolina area, Lincoln County, Catawba, Burke, Alexander, maybe even portions of Iredell. Yet to be seen on whether or not we'll have enough of this activity here to kind of hold on to come back into the Mecklenburg County area. And one of the things Scotty was talking about before that we're going to have to keep an eye on as well is, you'll notice right now in northern Iredell County, we have some rain. We have some rain that is using up the food we have. So as this line begins to march further south and east, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I do think we have Scotty back, who is a real expert on this part of the state, and so I know he's been watching it as well. And even if he wasn't able to hear a lot of our conversation, Scotty, did you notice here in the last few frames that this line is trying to get its act back together?
I was going to tell you that is definitely what we're watching. We just did another mass update for our audience, and those storms are really starting to strengthen as they move out of Watauga County. A lot of lightning now in northwest Caldwell over into Wilkes County, back up into the Spruce Pine area, Burnsville area. A lot of new lightning strikes, and those new lightning strikes are telling us that storm's really intensifying. One of our meteorologists here, Daniel Crawley, he just went outside and said he could really start to see the lightning as well, just to our northwest. So that line is starting to get its act together and really starting to bow out between Marshall and Weaversville back up into Burnsville. So we'll have to watch that bowing segment. That's where we most likely see the most damage and wind gusts out of that. So these storms are starting to get their act together. And James, you know, last time you and I talked about 10 minutes ago, 15, I was telling you when we went outside we could see the cumulus really develop off the mountain. So those updrafts are beginning to sustain themselves once again as they move off the mountains. I was just telling our audience in Caldwell County, it kind of reminds me of an event we had a couple of years back. We had a similar situation at MCS moving out of the Kentucky area. Really developed over the Collegeville community. It created a lot of wind damage up in that area and some flooding. So, not saying that's going to happen tonight, but it kind of just when you're in this business for a while, you start to remember storms from the past. So, it kind of gives me an idea of what could happen. So, these storms are really starting to strengthen. They're about to hit me probably in the next 30 minutes. So, we'll be busy here, but also chime in and let you know what's going on here. And if we can, we might try to sneak the computer outside if we could get some really good storm action where I'm currently at.
Scotty, just for folks who aren't familiar, you mentioned MCS. Could you tell us a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, basically it's just a massive it's an area of storms that kind of bows out. I know there's the word ratio, and that's a more long-lived storm system. So this storm system is just a storm system that moves into the area, mesoconvective system that moves into the area and just creates kind of Bowen segments, and those Bowen segments where we see some gusty winds that could create some damage over the area. So we'll watch that. MCSs are pretty common here in the summertime. We get that death ridge to set up just to our west, like going on right now, where all the heat's at in the Texas, Oklahoma, Arizona area. When you get those high pressures so strong, you see these storm systems move over around the high pressure. So the ring of fire, you may have also heard of that. You kind of get these storm systems to develop. And this storm system actually is what we saw last night in the Chicago area. And then one thing, James, and kind of pick your brain about this, I was talking with my fellow meteorologist here, is do you think we're going to see these clouds, what we call debris clouds, kind of kill our severe chances for tomorrow?
You know, I was just beginning to wonder a little bit about tomorrow, and I was trying to look and bring myself back up to speed a little bit on what will be fueling this tomorrow, because obviously we've got a line that's moving through now, and if you look at the Storm Prediction Center for the next few days, they're certainly watching it. You know, I would be really hesitant to put my cards out on the table just yet for tomorrow, to be completely honest, because I would say, personally speaking, what we're seeing tonight has caught me off guard. This is, you know, this isn't exactly what I would expect when the Storm Prediction Center says we are in an enhanced risk of seeing severe weather. That kind of brings to mind storms of a different degree, but I would say this is more than I was expecting here at almost midnight Eastern time as these storms begin to roll on through. I mean, they're still fairly healthy. We're not talking about a system that's winding down over. You know, it is losing some of that characteristic, but I mean, we're still seeing some pockets where it's catching our attention, and that is intriguing to me.
Yeah, it is. It's just something we'll have to watch. You know, when you get systems like this and they kind of die out over the area, it kind of leaves some debris clouds. And if that happens tomorrow morning and we get a couple of hours, several hours of cloud cover tomorrow morning, it could limit our heating of the day and the instability that creates over the areas. So we'll have to monitor that. I think we're under a slight risk tomorrow, so that's something we'll have to do.
You know, cloud cover is something that'll make or break a forecast, and I think anybody who's forecasted before will tell you that, because those clouds will act as a shield or as a blanket, depending on the time of day and the setup. And so, trying to predict what those clouds will do will be a big part of what happens tomorrow, and just exactly what the storm leaves behind. And that's a little bit about what Scotty is talking about. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Scotty. The Storm Prediction Center, again, out of Norman, Oklahoma, has us under a slight risk of severe weather tomorrow, and that really encompasses a lot of southern half of Virginia, all of North Carolina, and most of South Carolina, maybe with the exception as you make your way down towards Savannah. Just obviously across the border of Georgia, just so nobody thinks I'm...
Yeah, and you know, that's just something to watch tomorrow. And it's just severe weather is so fickle. I mean, we know how hard winter storm forecasting is, but in some aspects, severe weather forecasting is just as fickle because it takes so many ingredients to come together to get a system to develop. So that's something we'll have to watch tonight and tomorrow morning as the morning progresses and see how much cloud cover hangs around. So um, I will say this: it does look like after we get done with tomorrow, we're going to have a couple of days of some calmer weather, temperatures in the upper 80s, low 90s, but calmer weather before some more storms move in next week, or the chance of storms move in. What we really need, honestly, is just a few days of just some rain.
You know,
We need some rain, big
on,
time.
it is Thursday, right? So we got a drought index update this morning.
Yes. Hold on
Uh,
1 second.
okay. Every Thursday we get an update on the drought monitor that is put out to kind of give us a sense of what the conditions are out there. And this is something that, if I recall, and I will confirm in a second, is kind of in partnership with several agencies, including the USDA, which of course has a large interest in agriculture. And you will see that we were abnormally dry across a lot of portions of North Carolina, mainly the western half, and also the western half of South Carolina. You do have some pockets in here that are experiencing moderate to severe drought, but those are really back into Georgia, northern parts of Alabama, southern Tennessee. Here talking about portions of the southeast. We do have a little bit that's catching my attention as you make your way up into North Carolina. This, again, comes out only every Thursday. And so we will wait to see if this has changed at all next week after we get a couple rounds of rain kind of coming on through. But checking back in with the resort camps. This is Boone, where it looks like it did half an hour ago. I think those might be the same two people walking down the street as if nothing happened at all.
Not to cut you off, James, but just look at the latest radar, and it really, I got to get this statement out, so I'm going to make it brief, but it really just intensified over the foothills right now. So.
All right, thanks for the heads up, Scotty. We'll go ahead and take a look at that up on the radar scope right now. Just briefly, I was watching some areas of rain moving into Fayetteville and Fort Bragg. That was catching my attention as well. This is kind of out ahead of it. But let's look at that as Scotty is working on a statement he's got for his folks. We are watching kind of coming right here into the foothills of Lenore. We have a lightning strike here in the last few minutes. Again, a lightning strike is kind of just a rough way to get a kind of a sense of the strength of a storm. And so we're seeing that here, kind of this line that, again, we were watching. It came across the mountains, and we're trying to see if it's going to get its act back together, as you can kind of see just in this very last frame. And I'll draw it out there for you from North Wilkesboro, and it helps if I put the radar up on the screen now, doesn't it? Instead of my face. North Wilkesboro down towards Lenore, coming into, in the next few minutes, Morganton, Sawmill, and Hickory. This is a line of strong thunderstorms that is beginning to get its act back together here. Again, it is not a severe thunderstorm, so that means we are not talking about 60-mile-per-hour damaging winds, and we're not talking about quarter-size hail, but that doesn't mean we don't have winds less than that, or maybe even smaller size hail underneath that. Scotty is sharing with us one of their products, and he's really beginning to zoom in on a spot here as he's working on something, and I know he's working on that, but we will kind of take a look at him, what he's looking at right here. And we were looking at the storm reflectivity, so we're kind of getting the intensity of that rain. And there's that one lightning strike we were talking about just a moment ago, I believe. If we're looking at the same location coming in just north of Lenore, you can kind of see a real heavy backslide. You can see it in purple, where the rain is probably coming down at a real good rate, and something to keep in mind if you're going to be out traveling tonight. What Scotty is now looking at is velocity. This is the radar looking at winds coming towards it and away from it at the same time. And what I'm sure Scotty is trying to look at here is what the winds are kind of on this leading edge of this line of thunderstorms that is trying to come back together here over Lenore, Cedar Rock, down towards Gamewell. We could begin to see the winds picking up a little bit, and it's also probably worth checking, and I don't recall off the top of my head, so I'm going to look to see if we have any DOT cameras or even some resort cameras that are in this area as we make our way kind of south into the east of where we were before, looking in the Boone area, as we come into the high country here, coming out of the mountains into the lower elevations. But
that's where, look at that, that's where your line's going to form right there.
Yeah, so we're talking about areas north of Charlotte, north of Statesville here, and in the next few minutes here could begin to see this line kind of coming back together, and so that's something we're going to want to be keeping an eye on here in the next few minutes. And it doesn't look like we really have a camera. No, the only camera we have in that neck of the woods from our friends at Resort Cam is the one that was offline and showing sunshine. So that's obviously not going to be of any benefit.
I don't think we're seeing sunshine. I don't know if I had my mic on or not, but I was telling my guys here, you can really start to see this new line of storms form over North Wilkesboro back into Lenore. And I'd say in the next radar frame or two, we're going to start to see it develop over Burke and McDowell. And you can see here's a new lightning strike. This is what we call positive lightning. This is striking outside of the storm. I don't have a distance finder here, but I would say that's probably a good 5, 6, 7 miles outside of the main core of the storm. So that's telling me the storm is really starting to strengthen when we see this positive lightning. And probably in the next 2, 3 radar frames, we're going to see this line extend all the way into Burke and McDowell, maybe even back in towards northern Rutherford and Black Mountain area, the Black Mountain area. So we're going to have to really watch this area right here. I've got some people over in Caldwell County. We're looking for some reports, but I'd love to see what's falling in almost just north of downtown. That's either some really heavy rain. Well, it is really heavy rain, but I don't know. We may get some small hail out of that as well.
And that's certainly one of the things we're going to be watching for. And not to get off on a tangent here, but as the storm begins to move down towards the Iredell County area and north of Charlotte, I'm really beginning to get reminded of just how badly we need a radar here, Scotty, because the beam from Greenville, Spartanburg, by the time we get up into this neck of the woods, and I don't want to get off too much on a tangent here, folks, but we were talking before about how when this beam comes out, it's taking a slice of the atmosphere, but it goes up on an angle because the Earth is curved. So the beam is going straight, but the beam is traveling upward and further away from the ground. So we're talking maybe 10,000, 15,000 feet up, which is nice to know what's going on up there, but we also kind of want to know what's happening closer to the ground. So when we start getting into this area that's in the northern half of the Charlotte market area, the Charlotte metropolitan area, we're kind of stuck switching between radars because we have one that comes out of Blacksburg, kind of in the Roanoke area, which, if you'll don't mind my crude drawing, kind of gives us that. Greenville, Spartanburg kind of gives us that, and Roanoke kind of gives us that, but we're kind of left at this area up here that has nothing but kind of really high radar beams. So that's what Scotty was referring to just a few moments ago when he was saying that he would really love to get some storm reports, some on-the-ground observation, because we have all of this great technology, but at the end of the day, what really drives home the point here is having some on-the-ground observation. So I'm sure that's what Scotty and other folks will be looking for, including the National Weather Service. If I'm not mistaken, we're still just far enough south that a lot of this will be covered and monitored by the Greenville-Spartanburg area. So they're going to be looking for people to kind of let them know what's happening as they begin to monitor this, and it's going to be coming into, if it holds together here, the Hickory area, not too long, and after that, Statesville, if it holds together long enough. You did see pop up on my screen, not weather related, but some news out of the UK, whereas if you are a news junkie like you are a weather junkie, you were watching today as the public in Britain and the UK went to vote on whether or not that country should leave the European Union, and we are getting reports in that 3 major British broadcasters there are projecting that Britain to leave the European Union. That, according to a Fox News tweet that I'm seeing here, you saw the Associated Press pop up on my screen not too long ago. What does this have to do with weather? Absolutely not. I'm just trying to address the fact that you saw the Associated Press notification across the top of my screen, but this is something that, regardless of how this vote goes, this is obviously a part of the country we do a lot of business with, and while I am not an economics expert at all, I wouldn't be surprised one way or the other we see a little bit of a market fallout from this tomorrow morning. But again, even the Associated Press reporting the UK broadcasters, so they are citing the media there in Europe and in the UK predicting based on the numbers they have that Britain has voted to leave the 28-nation conglomerate that is the European Union in what was a historic referendum that was voted on today. So whether Yeah, go ahead, Scotty. Back to the weather, I assume.
No, I was wondering. I wonder how that'll affect the Euro model that we get.
Well, all of this, and I appreciate you bringing it back around to weather because you know what, that Euro model does a pretty good job in a lot of situations. Not all, but a lot. But I'm not an economics professor or expert or whatsoever. But all of this stuff is going to be connected one way or the other. So we'll wait to see the fallout in their market and in ours.
Definitely. And another non-weather related thing, the charter communication system is expected to shut down over much of western North Carolina from midnight to 6 a.m. Maintenance, A, that's important because that's what our office is run off this charter, and B, it's important because now with this line of severe weather moving in, people relying on the internet to get their updates. I don't know how that's going to affect that. So
I would think people relying on the internet to get their updates, and I don't know how the system is set up, but wouldn't be surprised if. How does the National Weather Service transmit their observations? I would imagine it's over somebody's network. They're not laying cables to every airport in the country, so that certainly would be interested to see, and that's a good point. So if you drop off here in the next few minutes, Scotty will know why.
You'll know why. Yeah, I'm gonna have to hotspot off my phone. But as I see your radar scope, that is what we were just talking about just a bit ago. That line really is now starting to extend there into Burke County, like we had just talked about, just north of Morganton, and probably the next radar screen will see it go into McDowell County. So this line is really now starting to develop off of the mountains. That's telling us there's a lot of energy still for it to work with. It's kind of overcome the daylight heating issue. We're going on midnight now, so the sunset has set for 3-4 hours now almost. So we still got that energy to work with as this storm system's moving in. So enough juice out there to create these storms and the updrafts and the clouds. So and it doesn't look to be weakening at all. It actually looks to be strengthening, especially over the foothills. So as that moves into the Hickory metro area and then down into Mooresville, Charlotte, Lincoln, and places like that, we'll have to continue to see how that goes.
And one of the things I'll be interested in seeing here, and I don't know how well at this distance, and you may know better than I, whether or not the radar is going to get a good sense of this, but if I put this into motion, again, this is kind of looking at those echo tops, the top of these storms, how much they are able to billow, and for lack of a better word, I'll kind of give you an analogy, boil. I always like to explain to people that thunderstorms are kind of like a boiling pot. You start with one bubble and then you get a lot, so we're watching to see just how much push-up we get on the atmosphere here. And so some of those greens would indicate some of those towering storm clouds that Scotty and colleagues were there. Scotty, I'm going to step away from this neck of the woods just for a second, just so we don't go too far without checking out the conditions in other parts of the state, because we still have that line that is kind of moving through, and you can see, even as you make your way towards the Outer Banks, where they have that special marine warning, which is kind of almost, if you will, the water version of a severe thunderstorm. A warning that they issue over water. We have lots of heavy rain, lots of lightning still pushing through that area, and the same can be said as we make our way further to the west into the central part of the state, now back towards Raleigh and Greenville, and even down towards Fayetteville, where they have some of these storms out ahead of the main line. The main line, I would speculate, is somewhere back in here that we were looking at before, but it's not as well organized as it was before. We're beginning to see that it may be falling prey to some of the decreasing ingredients in the atmosphere, part of which Scotty was talking about a moment ago, the lack of sunshine. We don't have a continuous line of fuel coming in, but we also have these little guys out front who might be eating into some of that fuel that is available. So that's one of the things I know I will be interested in seeing here as we're watching at least one area of storms kind of coming out of Lenoir through Sawsmill and Hickory. It's going to start pushing into parts of Iredell, which southern half of Iredell down towards Mooresville is currently raining, and it wasn't too long ago that we were looking at rain in the northern half of the county there. So we've had storms roll through there and theoretically use up some of that fuel that's in the atmosphere. So what the storm currently over Lenoir is doing and building up, we're going to have to see if it's got any ingredients left to work with as it starts to make its way south and east. But assuming it does, at least for the next few minutes, you can see the storm track there on the screen, and I think the computer is actually doing a pretty good job of tracking this here as it begins to come into Gamewell over the next few minutes, maybe about 12:20 and about 20 minutes into Sawmill, and then we'll look for it into parts of Hickory as it makes its way towards I-40. And we're looking at kind of just the heaviest part of the cell right here. That's what the storm track is on, but it's also worth noting that you're going to get some of these heavy rain conditions in other parts, including in Cedar Rock, where it's currently raining, and down towards Bethlehem and into Taylorsville and Stony Point, Love Valley, and not to neglect our friends in North Wilkesboro here, where you can see some of that heavy rain and some of that lightning that Scotty was talking about is already beginning to come down. I'll reset things just for a moment here. It is midnight Eastern time. You're watching a special Thursday night / Friday morning edition of the Carolina Weather Group here on YouTube and on our Google Plus page. And thank you so much to those following us on Facebook and Twitter as well. I'm James Brierton in Charlotte, North Carolina, joined by our friend Scotty, who is up in the just to the north and west of me as you make your way into the high country here of North Carolina. He is working tonight, his day job, which just like so many people in the weather community has become a night job here, as we are watching kind of an area of storms rolling into the area, and that's what we have up on the radar right now. We don't have any warnings. We don't have any severe thunderstorm warnings to tell you about, but the reason that we are jumping on the air here tonight is because what prompted our attention not too long ago was the Storm Prediction Center, the wing of the National Weather Service that monitors the entire country and puts out a lot of watches. A lot of times when we're talking about severe thunderstorm watches or tornado watch, which is not in the cards tonight, but they issue those watches for areas. A lot of the North Carolina area was under a severe thunderstorm watch, and that was in part due to the fact that they were expecting, and you can see it there in orange on your screen, an enhanced risk for seeing severe weather across a large portion of North Carolina. Those not in the orange box were in the yellow slight, and then the rest of us here, even making our way into upstate South Carolina in this darker green or marginal risk, kind of working my way down on a scale from 0 to 5. The enhanced is a 3, followed by slight 2 and marginal 1. So at a 3 out of 5, roughly speaking, we were watching for the chance of severe weather, mainly in the form of damaging winds. And while we haven't gotten a lot of storm reports in just yet, when you're looking at storms like this coming through an area that has already experienced rain, we are expecting to see reports of trees down, branches down, which could result in power outages or roads being blocked, especially in rural areas. And that's what we are already seeing in parts of the central state as we move this radar back out to the latest image from the Raleigh National Weather Service radar image, where they too had a line, same line of severe storms kind of pushing through. It's falling apart a little bit at this hour because, yes, we were dragging on later on into the evening, but we did have reports from this storm and other storms of trees being knocked down in areas, including in Wake County, where at 8:30 tonight a large tree was down near Shooting Club Road. We also have one of the other threats tonight, in addition to the wind threat we were watching, and you can kind of see it here outlined in green, are flash flood warnings that are up for parts of the area. Only one county here in North Carolina, it looks like. A lot of these being issued north of the border into Virginia, where they got about 3 inches of rain or so falling. So depending on how this rain is interacting with the ground is going to be one of the things to see whether or not we get any issuings of flash flood warnings where we are seeing some pooling of water in areas where maybe water doesn't normally pool, because we're dealing with 3, 4, 5 inches in some places of all this water that needs to run off. We talked not too long ago about drought conditions. That's going to be one of the things that factors into, I think, whether or not we get a flash flood warning, is whether or not the ground can hold this water. If the ground is dry, it can take in this water, that's great. If it's too dry, that's a different question. But if it has the capacity to hold some of this water, that will be a plus for us because that'll help it run off. But if we're into an area where the ground cannot hold the water for whatever reason, maybe being it rained earlier and once you saturate a sponge, it's already saturated and can't hold more water, then we could begin to see some of these flash flood warnings being issued in areas where they're having problems dealing with the amount of water running off, because again, we could be talking about, in parts, about 3-4 inches of rain. The other big threat tonight, and this doesn't really fall into any of our bulletins, it doesn't fall into a severe thunderstorm warning, it doesn't fall into a flash flood warning, is lightning. Lightning is very dangerous. If you were close enough to hear thunder, you were close enough to be struck by lightning. And you can kind of see it there mixed in with some of the stronger areas of thunderstorms. We have quite a few numbers of lightning strikes. I would say not as many as when we came on YouTube here at about 10:30 Eastern time, but now at midnight, we're seeing a little less lightning. But we're watching all of this kind of as it comes on through. And in our neck of the woods here, Scotty and I, trying not to be too biased, but our area of expertise, certainly in the western half of the state, we were watching this guy right here. He is kind of pushing to the south and east and will be into the Hickory area if he holds together, and certainly it looks like he is in the next 30 to 40 minutes or so. I actually would be willing to bet he's moving a little bit faster than the storms on the screen are looking, because if we put this guy into motion, he is certainly chugging along at a pretty good rate here, and so I would expect to probably see him in Hickory before 12:55, like the computer is trying to guess here just based on some of its previous movement. But again, Charlotte, North Carolina, quiet at this hour. Out towards Union County, we had some rain earlier, Anson and Richmond. But also as you make your way north out of the Charlotte area, up towards Kannapolis there, into Rowan, parts of Cabarrus, and even parts of Davidson getting in on the action here along the Interstate 85 corridor. And let's not forget about Iredell County that I've been keeping a close eye on, and I'll explain again why in a moment. But in Mooresville there, you're seeing a storm coming through with some lightning strikes. The reason that I'm finding all of this super interesting, and we're seeing it in several parts of the state, is because we have a line of thunderstorms here that's trying to get its act together. But as it pushes to the south and east, we've got storms out ahead of it that are kind of consuming up the ingredients in the atmosphere. So that is one of the reasons why I wouldn't be surprised to see this line kind of fall apart as it gets into Iredell, because it'll have less to work with than it currently has over parts of Morganton there, which I know Scotty is very familiar with. But you can kind of almost see how this storm is really catching our eye here, because we're just watching that circle. It's pushing off not only to the south and east, but almost growing a little bit, if you will, on its southern flank there. And I think what is probably happening here is, if you watch over Spruce Pine, you've got some of these storms falling apart and sending out a wave, if you will, in the atmosphere that's interacting with the line out in front of it. And we're beginning to see kind of the storm weakening here, but benefiting from that over here as we kind of organize our thoughts in what is a nice little line here that in just the last radar scan has just a little bit of a bow to it as it becomes kind of out of Gainwell into Sawmill, and that's sometimes where some of those most intense winds are. So let's go ahead and look at radar estimated winds. Again, these are radar estimated winds, slices of the atmosphere that the radar is able to see in this part of the state, probably a good 10,000 feet up. So this is not necessarily what is being seen on the ground, but we can use it as a rough estimate to kind of get an idea of maybe what's coming into Sawmill in the next few minutes. And we're looking at winds not all too impressive here, about 15 miles per hour or so at its most, but we'll watch to see if that changes, or if we're just getting really bad returns from the radar as well, is something to keep an eye on. So we'll go ahead and we'll throw this back into reflectivity here, put this into motion for you here. This is kind of the hot spot that I think we're watching at the moment here. Again, this is not a severe thunderstorm, but it is a part of the system we are watching. Pretty strong right now, and I would say increasingly strong over the last few frames or so. And you can tell not only by the colors you're seeing there on the reflectivity, the yellow, the orange, and the red, but also a rough estimator from the lightning. We do now have a special weather statement from the National Weather Service in Greenville-Spartanburg, which kind of watches and monitors this area of the state. Not necessarily for this guy here, but as we again look back off to the north of the Charlotte area, we do have some storms here, and the National Weather Service issuing a special weather statement for gusty winds that will impact Mecklenburg, southern Rowan, northern Union, Cabarrus, and southeast Irondale. This is going to be over the next about 50 minutes or so. This special weather statement will continue through about the 1 a.m. hour because of Doppler radar indicated strong thunderstorms that are extending from a line 13 miles east of Salisbury to 3 miles northeast of Kannapolis. You're seeing it on your screen there, about 12 miles east of Newton, and it's moving south at 45 miles per hour. These are a little bit more popcorn style, a little bit more scattered than that line you're seeing on the left-hand side of your screen through Lenoir and Sawsmill. But we're watching for wind gusts here, about 40 miles per hour possible in these areas. Again, that's not quite severe criteria, but certainly 40 mile per hour winds in an area that may have some trees that are maybe not as strong as we would like them to be. We wouldn't be surprised to see some trees come down, some branches come down, and what that really means, especially in rural areas, you could have some small roads blocked, but also maybe some power outages will be something to keep a close eye on, because generally they're one of the first susceptible to when branches and trees start falling. They maybe will take down a power line or that is not too far from it, that may be adjacent to it. Scotty is up in the mountains, a fellow panelist here on the Carolina Weather Group. I know he's working at some things right now, and based on the look in his eyes, I think he's in the middle of something, so we will check back in with him in a little while, because I know he's got a number of things he is looking at on the screen here. But taking a look at kind of what's happening across the area right now, we do have a number of special weather statements that are out. Again, these are a bulletin that the National Weather Service issues kind of as a heads up. This is what we're watching. We are on top of it. It's not quite severe criteria, but is something we're keeping an eye on, and we do have a number of these out right now for some of our counties across the area. But one in particular, in addition to what we just talked about, is kind of this this area we're watching right in here, kind of just coming up into parts of Catawba, parts of Alexander, Caldwell, and Burke. You can kind of see it circled here on the screen, where we're watching the storm that is now pushing towards Interstate I-40 out of Sawmill and Hickory, which actually will be good news for us trying to get some observations, because if I'm not mistaken, and I will double check, I'm highlighting Interstate 40 right there. We do have some DOT cameras along that route, but also what we're going to take a brief look in, and he's probably conversing with some of his colleagues, but he's made it available for us to get an even closer look in here. This is a look from our friend Scotty's computer, where he's watching this cluster of strong thunderstorms that has made the National Weather Service issue a special weather statement, kind of say, hey, yeah, we are watching this. And because you can see just how much lightning there is with that storm, we're kind of getting a sense that it's a fairly healthy storm. New storm report just in and confirmed by the National Weather Service. This is for Rowan County. This is Salisbury. A trained weather spotter reports, sure enough, thunderstorm wind damage. It happened at 11:45 at night, and this is actually something that, in terms of wind damage, is kind of on the harsher side of severe, if you were to put these on a scale. A tree has fallen on a house. This is off Forestdale Drive in Salisbury. Again, a tree has fallen on a house. Forestdale Drive in Salisbury as of about 11:45. That was about half an hour ago. I'm going to see if we can pull the radar back. You can see Salisbury circled right there on your screen. And bear with me just a second. I'm going to go into the settings of my radar scope. We had it on 6 frames because we were trying to get a real close look at what some of these storms are doing. But if I roll this back over the course of the last hour, we're going to be looking for some strong storms that likely came through that area with winds, that may have taken down this weak tree. We don't have any indication yet whether or not there are any injuries or any substantial damage. We can certainly hope that this maybe was a weaker of a tree or a smaller of a tree that maybe just caused some cosmetic damage to the house. Based on when we see these reports, I think that's probably the best case scenario. And actually what we're seeing here over the Salisbury area, and let me zoom in a little bit here for you, you're watching kind of a storm build up and then kind of fall apart over the Salisbury area. So there's a lot that could be happening here in the atmosphere, and it's a little too early to speculate on what could have brought down a tree. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to a different radar source. I'm going to switch to the Raleigh one. It's a little bit closer than the Greenville one, but you can kind of see we're still kind of out on the outer edges here, because what I want to look for is I want to look for any indication that we got a really concentrated area of winds, possibly caused by a moving thunderstorm or a collapsing thunderstorm, because what we were seeing there on the reflectivity was some of those storms kind of pulsing, coming up and then dissipating over that area. So the radar scope here, just pulling back some of this data from the Raleigh radar over the course of the last hour or so, this tree was observed down on the house at about 11:45. It's not exactly clear when the tree actually came on down, but we can see we do have, again, this is in the upper atmosphere, so the data we have to work with is well above where this house or where this tree is, but nothing too odd strikes me right off the bat, especially given the altitude that it is that we are working with here. But we are watching for some of these storm reports. I don't know, Scotty, if you've had a chance to check this out at all, or if you're seeing maybe anything on the radar scope that I'm not, although I'm a little hesitant because of the altitude to speculate what maybe brought down this tree on this house.
One thing I was going to mention, you might want to try the terminal Doppler.
That's an excellent point. Terminal Doppler, a lower power radar actually in the Charlotte area. Although, Scotty, I don't have the exact time frame, and this is really, really speculative because of the data we have to work with, but we do have a little something there over Salisbury as some of the storms come on through in terms of wind force there. But let's try exactly what Scotty recommended because, that's my phone. Because, again, we're working with radars here, the high power radars that the National Weather Service has for our area, for the Charlotte area, really kind of come out of Raleigh and Greenville, South Carolina. So they do have a lower power terminal radar. You see them a lot near airports, hence the name terminal radar, and we can kind of maybe use that to get a better look up into this neck of the woods, which is otherwise kind of a hole, if you will, in the regular radar network. So as that begins to load on back, we are seeing a little bit of data there to indicate there were some winds that were probably associated with these thunderstorms for one reason or another. It kind of came through Salisbury here in the past hour or so. And again, the reason we're looking at this so closely is because the National Weather Service has passed along a storm report from a trained weather spotter that likely caused by a thunderstorm wind brought down a tree on a house, Forestdale Drive in Salisbury. Again, no immediate reports of injuries. Hopefully everyone's okay. I think best case scenario here would be some cosmetic damage to the house. But while we are on this radar, let me go ahead and throw it into kind of long range mode so it looks a little bit more traditional to what you're seeing. We'll take one last look at these storms before we head back out to real time and take a look at some of the things that are coming into the Hickory area and into Catawba County, coming out of Caldwell, Burke, and Alexander, where a line of thunderstorms kind of really is holding its own.
Yeah, I was going to say, that radar is really starting to fill in back to the west, over McDowell County, back into northern Rutherford County. So,
yeah, so let's slide this off to the west here, and actually it's beginning to come into an area where we can begin to use the terminal radar as it kind of gets out in the fringes there as it comes across the mountains. It's kind of harder to see, but as it gets closer and closer to the Charlotte area, especially kind of once it crosses the I-40 corridor, we might be able to get a better indication of what that storm is doing, especially since, Scotty, right now it's up in that hole.
I was going to say, you can see the water tower there.
Yeah, there's a water tower, and exactly. But actually, Scotty, what's also just catching my attention that I didn't notice, I don't think too much before, is we got a little bit of activity here. We talked about Mooresville, but this is actually extending a little bit further off to the west now. As we put the radar back into motion, maybe we can indicate why.
Yeah, you can see Cheryl's Ford, and that may be developing off the outflow boundaries as this line moves into the foothills. It's going to start to push out some cool air out over Catawba County. As you can see, the METAR here for, let me share my screen, and then I'll show you what I'm talking about. Here's the METAR out of Hickory. You can see we had a wind gust of 22 miles per hour and really no storm around. So what that's telling me is this line's developing in the foothills right here, and as you can imagine, it's kind of like dropping a rock into a pond, and you see the ripples of that rock hitting the water. So those ripples are the outflow boundaries, and it's starting to push that across Catawba County, and it's starting to interact with the warm air over northern Mecklenburg, southern Iredell, and it's starting to pop up new thunderstorms over Mooresville. And if you can see here in Cornelius, 2 brand new lightning strikes there, so that's telling me that that storm's starting to really grow in that area. So one thing I will say this line has really tailed off here back over the Asheville area. And you can see over the foothills, we're really not seeing a lot of new lightning strikes. There's one just outside of Sawmills. There's a few here in Morganton. You see that little cross? That's actually where I live. That's my house. So there's lightning on either side of my house right now. So, but it's really starting to move off of the mountains now into the foothills, and that air, that boundary, the cooler air that's being pushed out of the thunderstorm, probably is starting to fire up some new storms here in southern Iredell, northern Mecklenburg, back over towards Cabarrus and Kannapolis. So that's something we'll have to watch. And as you can see, behind this line, there's some rain. So beneficial rain, nothing severe with this. So that's some good news as well. So James, I'm telling you, it doesn't look like we're going to see the enhanced threat really materialize over this part of North Carolina. At least as of right now, it's not going to.
Yeah, and I think especially once we get these two systems here, these two areas of storms to kind of interact with each other, it'll be really interesting to see how they play with each other, because they may not play nicely. We're looking at a NC DOT camera right now. This is Cornelius, Interstate 77. We have some traffic off in the distance, but the roads are still dry. We are not yet seeing any activity on this camera. We do not have any cameras in the Morganton area that are showing any rain. There's a handful of cameras up there, but I'm sure Scotty will tell you they're not always the most reliable. And we have one.
I don't even know if they work up there.
Yeah, one was just a blank image, so that was not super helpful. And we don't really have anything showing rain right now in the Mooresville area, but we are looking at a camera right now. This is Cornelius. Again, the camera's probably a few minutes behind, and depending on where the camera is, it may not be able to see this guy, this little cell now that has just crossed into northern Mecklenburg County, just barely out of Iredell County, and is going to be also impacting parts of Cabarrus. A lot of those counties under a special weather statement. Again, not severe criteria, but an area that we're watching closely, not only for the heavy rain, but also because of the wind threat. That's why the National Weather Service has areas like Cleveland, McDowell, Burke, Rutherfield, and Rutherford Mountains also under a special weather statement for some of the winds. And that, again, not what you're looking at here on your screen. That's back up into the high country, but the area up on your screen as well is also under a special weather statement. That's Cabarrus, Iredell, Mecklenburg, Rowan, Union for the next 40 minutes or so, not only for the storms that are there now, but I would also imagine, Scotty, for the storms back behind it that still looking pretty good here for 12:20 in the morning.
It is. Man, it's 12:20. It's hard to believe that. Yeah, these storms still going. We call these nocturnal storms. We've talked about that a couple of times on here already. Storms really kind of die off after the sun sets, but there's so much instability and so many ingredients to work with. These storms are really starting to continue to thrive as all right, I'll talk to you later, as they move off of the mountains. So my coworkers are leaving. Chris actually works for the Emergency Services Department in Burke County, so he's got a job to get to at 5 o'clock in the morning. So we're going to continue to hold the fort down here for the next little bit as these storms move through the area.
And I'm really going to be interested in seeing, stepping away from the live radar for just a moment and going back to what we were talking about Salisbury and that tree down. I'm waiting to see more reports of more trees down, because Duke Energy, of course, one of the major electrical power suppliers to our region, reporting nearly 3,000 customers without power right now in Rowan, and they may not have their lights back on until 4 o'clock in the morning as crews have to go out there and do the repairs, but they're going to have to wait for some of this weather to reside, and also that line back behind it is going to be a factor. So 3,000 Duke Energy customers right now without power in the Rowan County area. This was first reported at just after 6 o'clock tonight, when we began to see some of these storms move across the area. And of course, I'm sure the storms that are happening now are not helping that. And again, if you missed it just a moment ago, we do have a report that a tree is down on a house, Forestdale Drive in Salisbury. No immediate indication of any injuries. Hopefully everyone is okay, but we are beginning to see some of these reports trickle in from different parts of the state that have experienced some of these stronger storms, where trees may be in saturated ground or dry ground are beginning to fall over here as they interact with some of these wind gusts on average 30, 40 miles per hour with these storms, about 20 miles below severe criteria.
Yeah, definitely. Just really watching the radar fill in here in the foothills. So we'll get that to move through and then get some of this beneficial rain. Like you said, James, that's really interesting to see these storms really develop over Concord, back towards Cornelius, Mooresville, Sherrills Ford area. We'll have to see if this line up in the foothills can kind of catch up with that. If so, that could kind of push everything out of the Charlotte metro area here in the next little bit. So we'll have to watch out. But this line really starting to not be as intimidating as it was a couple hours ago moving into the area. I'll be honest with you, when they issued the enhanced, kind of got me all riled up. Like, this could be an interesting night with a lot of winds and stuff like that. Just hasn't come to fruition yet. So uh, we'll have to kind of reflect over this as we go throughout the next few days, and definitely something to have everyone talk about as we talk next Wednesday.
And I think that's something that goes on with every weather system at all times. The National Weather Service will go back and kind of review what they thought was going to happen, what actually happened, and make any tweaks accordingly.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. So that's some. I've got some people in the Caldwell County area. Nothing really big to report. Just a lot of reports of some very heavy rainfall over in that area and some vivid lightning, uh, things like that. But no damage or anything like that. So that's good. We want to see that trend continue as it moves out of the foothills into the Piedmont areas.
Absolutely, and I'm trying to pull up a picture from our friend Ricky, who was just on the other side of the mountains there for you, on the Tennessee side from where you are. He managed to capture some of that lightning earlier, and we will go ahead and kind of pop that up on your screen now. He tweeted it out just a few minutes ago, and you can kind of see that. Look at that! I don't know how he caught that, but perfect timing there from our photographer friend Ricky, as yet another lightning strike he says hitting the ground, and that's I think one of the big takeaways from the storm is just the amount of lightning that we were seeing, and not seeing as much of it now on the systems that are kind of looking into the Charlotte area and even elsewhere in the state where the systems are beginning to, I think, finally weaken.
Yeah, it's starting to weaken. So right now, my biggest concern is I'm not really overly concerned about it, but I guess if you live in the Hickory area, back towards Newton, Taylorsville, Maiden, Statesville, places like that, we're going to see that line move into that area probably in the next 30 minutes or so. These storms move about 20 miles an hour, so um, but nothing too much. Not many lightning strikes, new lightning strikes showing up on radar, so that's a good sign. But a lot of heavy rain, and if that's all we get out of this event, that's good in two things. We need the rain around here, and it definitely means that we didn't get a lot of wind damage or stuff like that, like we could have going into the night.
Absolutely. And I think we are finally really beginning to see some of this wind down. I'd be curious just to keep an eye on it for another moment, because if nothing else, I'm curious to see what's going to happen when it runs into this area where we've got some other storms already working. But other than that, we don't have any active warnings across the area right now, which I'd really be interested to see if we had any additional warnings issued after the Storm Prediction Center put out that enhanced risk.
Excuse me, I haven't seen any. Haven't seen any at all. One of our weather spotters just sent up a picture. It is 12:30. No, it's 12:30. I know it's June 24th. 12:30 on June the 24th, and it's still 83 degrees outside.
I was just beginning to wonder about the temperatures. And, I would have to think that we'll get a short beef of a period of reprieve here before things really heat up again tomorrow. Where maybe when you head out the door tomorrow, it won't be so awful.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to see. It's it may still be warm out there. It's crazy the past couple of mornings. getting out around 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, and the temperature's just already being so warm. It's just got that feel to it. You're just like, eventually, you've got to have some kind of storms to develop. And so tonight's finally that's starting to happen. And like you said, James, kind of caught us all by surprise. Uh, we knew there would be a chance of maybe a few thunderstorms, but not enough to warrant uh, the concern that we had coming in a couple of hours ago when the uh, enhanced was issued for our area. But nonetheless, some storms. Thankfully, it's nothing like they've had up in West Virginia. And you may have talked about this already, but just a lot of flooding coming out of that area tonight. Seeing pictures of places up in the West Virginia area. PGA golfer Bubba Watson lives at the Greenbrier, has a home up at Greenbrier at the country club, and they have a PGA Tour event in 2 weeks, and the whole course is flooded under several feet of water. So I don't know how that's going to affect the golf tournament coming up. But he showed a picture of or a video of the first fairway, and it just several feet underwater. So thankfully we're not having to deal with the flooding issues that they are in West Virginia tonight. And I've seen earlier today some wind damage reports up in Virginia. So thankfully we've not had to deal with that so far. And it doesn't look like we're going to have to unless this stuff really starts to strengthen. And I just don't think that it's going to strengthen that much. But still can't rule out maybe an isolated damage and wind report here or there.
Yeah, that's kind of where I figured we'd hang on here for the next just a few minutes, especially since we're coming into the populated Charlotte area. But it's really interesting as I was looking at the last few radar scans. Those guys are going, I would say, more south than east, and this guy I think is going more east than south.
They're confused.
They're confused. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how they interact with each other here in just a moment. We do have just a brief update from the National Weather Service. Again, this is another special weather statement. This is just advising us that gusty winds, 40 miles per hour or so, from thunderstorms impacting Mecklenburg, Gaston, which I think we just added Gaston here. Cleveland has been added on. I think we had Union previously. We had Cabarrus. We had we are adding now. And I'm trying to read these off while trying to tell you who's new and who's old. But we're adding York, Cherokee, Chester. This is until 1 a.m. So this is kind of that, roughly speaking, there you have it. We are watching for some wind gusts with these storms. So wouldn't be surprised if we get a few more branches down in the Charlotte area. But that's kind of where we stand right now. We are, I think, pretty safe to say well below severe criteria. 60-mile-per-hour winds is really not on the table at this point.
Yeah, I don't see that. Maybe some gusts, like you said, 40, 45 miles per hour, but that should be about it. So let's see. Let's look at the newest radar trends here. Lightning wise, let me show you what I'm looking at. I'll help you guys out here for a little bit. Here's our latest screen here. Starting to see some lightning come into Catawba County now, just outside of North Hickory. Up here in Taylorsville, there's some new lightning strikes being detected. Over into Alexander County, some new strikes over here in the Valdez, Drexel, Conley Springs area. So Lenore, that storm's already passed out of that area. Morganton, the storm's starting to move out. Storm just south of Lake James here, going to pass just to the south of Glen Alpine. If you're traveling on Interstate 40 between Asheville and Hickory, you're going to see some rain as you get into McDowell and Burke County. So these storms moving off, kind of slowed down a little bit, now at 12 knots there in Burke County. Let's see what this storm up here in Caldwell is moving. About 20 knots. So 12, 20, we'll say about 50 miles an hour as they're moving off to the east-southeast, I guess.
And I will go ahead and pop up on the screen here a look at the eastern half of North Carolina, Greenville, Durham, Greensboro, Fayetteville areas here, even out towards the shore, where we are still seeing some strong areas of rain falling. Some of them I wouldn't even necessarily categorize as thunderstorms anymore because I think the lightning is starting to fall off, although we still have some pockets of it. But all of us kind of watching out for those 30, 40 mile per hour wind gusts, and Duke Energy is seeing them as well. We look at Wake County, Raleigh, about 2,100 Duke Energy customers out. Durham, another 1,100 or so out there, and we're even seeing that in the the Greensboro area, where about 3,100 Duke Energy customers are without power right now, probably due to these thunderstorms. And that's what we saw again in Salisbury not too long ago. We're checking out Duke Energy being really, for the most part, the majority provider of electricity to a lot of homes in our neck of the woods. We'll slide the radar back here, back towards the Charlotte area, where we have this terminal radar on the north side of town. You can actually see it if you're ever here and you're on Interstate 485, because I really wanted to kind of get a look at what these storms are doing here as they come back into Hickory. And you can kind of see, I do believe that they are weakening a little bit, which is good news and to be expected, because it's beginning to get even later into the evening. We have less fuel in the atmosphere for these storms to work with, and they're coming into parts of the atmosphere that, as you can even see here, even in the last few minutes, had some of their own storms working, and so we are sucking up that fuel, I think, fairly quickly here, as you can even begin to see some of the storms back off towards Concord, Harrisburg, and Kannapolis begin to fall apart a little bit. You can watch them here as they kind of drive south from Salisbury, holding on for a moment, and then in those last few frames falling apart into a little bit of a weaker state. And that's one of the things Scotty was talking about, a little less radar. So I think we'll do one last check here of the Greenville-Spartanburg radar to kind of really show you, because that TWR, that terminal radar that comes out of Charlotte from about here and looks up this way, is actually blocked by a water tower. So there's a section really kind of just past Hickory, kind of up in this area, where we can't see on that radar. But if we use our main radar from Greenville-Spartanburg, we can kind of see now where some of this heavier rain is really beginning to interact with Interstate 40 here as it comes into Hickory and outer parts of Morganton and Sawmill. And it's going to be coming into Newton and Maiden here in the next few minutes in parts of Catawba County. And wouldn't be surprised if we do see some raindrops in parts of Lincoln, in parts of northern Mecklenburg County, and maybe even making its way into the uptown area, as some of this is trying to hold on, but not nearly as strong as it was a few minutes ago. What do you think, Scotty? We calling it a night?
Yeah, I think we can do that. I don't think that we're going to see anything too much intensification of anything. Kind of looking back to our north and northwest, I don't really see anything. There's some stuff over Knoxville, but I don't think that'll make the trip. Just that line out of Burke, Catawba, Alexander, Caldwell, it's really starting to die off as well. And as you said, the storms over towards Concord really starting to dissipate some. So I think we'll be good. Just had a report out of the far eastern part of McDowell County of some leaf litter and some small tree branches that's been blown into the roads. So nothing big, but that does kind of show you there was some maybe 25, 30, 35 mile per hour wind gust in that area. But yeah, I think we can call it a night if you want to, James. That does sounds good with me. If you do that, I'm gonna probably pack up here at the office and finish whatever coverage I have left there at the house.
I want to show one last thing before we do that. If you watch these storms as they come on through, somewhere about here in the last few radar frames, we can kind of really begin to see that outflow boundary.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and let me get the line out of the way and watch it there. Watch for it over Turville. And you can kind of see just a brief line of kind of lighter. You can kind of see it come out of Marion, out of the I-40 corridor, and even kind of into Interstate 85 near Belmont in parts of Gaston County to the west of Charlotte. And that will kind of indicate to us that if we are going to get anything else in the next few minutes, it kind of will fall back into these areas. But I think, like Scotty and I have been saying, we don't have a whole lot going on. And as we draw into later into the evening, it's going to be less and less likely that these storms will have the fuel they need to intensify further.
Yeah, I was going to say we probably would already start to see at least some showers develop along that outflow boundary. I haven't seen that, uh, so that kind of tells me we may see some showers develop there eventually, but I don't think we're going to see anything major fall as the outflow boundary continues to move towards the upstate of South Carolina.
Have you had any final thoughts about tomorrow?
Oh man, tomorrow. I don't know. It depends on how much cloud cover sticks around. I'm kind of looking back to our north. Let me pull up the Knoxville, Tennessee radar. Uh, it just depends on how much rain we get tonight, how much leftover rain we have, and let me screen share that. It looks like a lot of the energy kind of went over into the central part of Tennessee. Here's the Knoxville area, just to the west of that, back between Knoxville and Nashville. A lot of lightning and thunderstorm action taking place now. As we kind of look back up here towards Kentucky, let's see, let's have some decent lightning showing up. There it is. There's the Jackson, Kentucky radar. I knew it was hiding in there somewhere. So nothing really, though, developing up in this direction. So if we can get that line to push through and it's really starting to dissipate over portions of western North Carolina, we may not have as much cloud cover in the morning. But I guess what I'm going to say is if we have some cloud cover in the morning, I think we can kind of not worry as much about severe weather. But if we clear off early in the morning and we get some sunshine in there, a few hours of sunshine, I definitely think we could stand the chance of seeing some more thunderstorms. Like we said, I think we're under a slight risk for tomorrow. So as we go in retrospect, we probably could have been sufficient with a slight risk tonight. But things happen. You can, what we talk about in the weather world. You can see everything in the world about weather models, and that's severe weather, winter weather, whatever the case may be. The models tell you so much, but you can't fully base everything off those models. You also have to go off of instinct and stuff like that. So we'll have to see. I see you got the visible satellite up. It's quite a bit of cloud cover still up in Kentucky. So we'll have to see how that moves in. That's a interesting feature over Missouri as well. Look at those.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I was like, wait, did I miss a memo?
Look at those storms developing there in northern Oklahoma. Look at that. Kansas. That's pretty cool.
Well, we will.
This is Weather Geek right there, right here. This is you just want to geek out.
12:30 at night, staring at satellite.
That's right, and you can tell over there in central Tennessee, there's no cloud cover right along the edge of those storms right there, so it may have a little bit more fuel to work with as well. So we'll see.
We will see, and we thank you for tuning in to this special Thursday night edition of the Carolina Weather Group as we watch some of these storms sneak up on us and maybe not come to fruition as we had thought in certain degrees, but I guess that's good news. It's always better to be safe than sorry.
It's good news, and hey, we got to work on our severe weather coverage.
Yeah.
Whoever is watching at 12:45, we'll kind of give you something we talked about last night after our show is kind of bringing this aspect a little bit more into our show and kind of doing some more live weather coverage. So always good to kind of knock the dust off and get that going as well. A good trial run tonight and something weather cooperate, and we hope to continue to do over the next few months.
I am thankful there were no warnings, but warnings would have helped me kill time over the last 2 hours. Thank you, Scotty, for helping me do that.
Yeah, no problem. I hate that I couldn't contribute more, but we're a little anxious. We're trying to get everything prepared. As you can see, I was not dressed up to come to work tonight. I just had the gym shorts on and a t-shirt, and we made the call to staff the office tonight, so we all rushed up here and we're prepared for the worst, but hoping for the best, and it seems like that worked out for us all tonight. Being prepared, but it doesn't seem that we had much. And as you can see, that outflow boundary still not created much on it. So that should be a sign to us that things are really starting to dwindle down.
I was just going to say you're wearing your athletic shirt, and I managed to find this shirt before running in here moments earlier, but still wearing khaki shorts from earlier in the day. So
there you go. There you go.
That, and it's still 90 degrees in this apartment.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
Now that I've shown way too much leg.
it's the late night edition. There you go. You can get away with it on the late night edition.
Carolina Weather Group After Dark. Well, if you did just stumble across the coverage for the first time, we welcome back your comments. We also hope you get your like and your fellowship, if you would. If you will follow us on social media, Facebook and Twitter. We are, of course, with you every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern for the live Q&A discussion portion of what we do here, bringing on the experts to talk about topics in weather. So we hope to see you. Follow us on YouTube so you can watch those shows live or replay them. Scotty is shaking his head yes. And Scotty, do you have a tease for this coming Wednesday night?
Yeah. So this coming Wednesday night, Mike Malkoff from the Weather Channel is going to be joining us. He is going to be kind of talking about severe weather and why it is so frequent in Oklahoma. Why they can have tornadoes any month of the year. So he did he did a lot of research out there, kind of finding out what's taking place out in Oklahoma and why they are so susceptible of seeing some severe weather. So kind of a good segue. We're talking about severe weather tonight. We'll talk about it next Wednesday and kind of see what his studies has found. And as I can see, James is...
This is not severe weather, but I was going to say, don't look now.
Some showers finally starting to pop up.
But follow the outflow.
A new cell kind of developing there just south of Hickory. It kind of looks healthy as well.
Talking about that guy up here?
Yeah, that guy right there. That'll be moving into the Maiden and Newton area. It kind of just pops up just like that. Watch this. Boop.
Boop. Does that mean we're not leaving?
That's up to you. We can call another scan, or we can call it a night. However you feel.
Why we're so transparent? We're making these calls, and these are normally things that happen in newsrooms behind the scenes where viewers can't see them, and somebody finally gets in the weather person's ear and says, "Shut up, you're done."
Yeah.
I'm out of water, but I don't know. I don't think we're going to cross into severe criteria here. And while I am interested to see what happens in the next few minutes, and willing to sit here until, well, however long is needed, but at least 1 o'clock Eastern, I don't think we're going to. We're nowhere near severe criteria, and trust me, folks, if we were, we wouldn't be having this debate.
Yeah, nothing close to that. Let's see. I'm looking at 15, 20, 25 mile per hour winds out of that, so nothing too big.
Yeah. However, my weather radio will go off if for whatever reason we need to be back here at any time.
That's right. Yeah, we can do that, and I can join via phone if we need to do that.
So while we are leaving you with still some rain on the radar, we can assure you that while you might hear a little wind outside and maybe a branch or two will come down, it is safe to go to bed. And just like we practice what we preach, when we step out of the lightning to go inside so that we're not standing outside in the lightning, I think we should practice what we preach and go to bed.
That's it. I'm all for that. I got about a 15-minute commute home, so I'm good for that.
And like I said, hopefully you are already following us, but if you're not already, please do. And we will be back here if and when you need us. And don't be shy. Be polite, but we welcome your constructive criticism. And if there's any suggestions you might have, or if there's anything you wish we were doing that we weren't, or maybe there's something we're doing you wish we didn't, just let us know.
Yeah, definitely. We're always open to feedback, like James said. We're always trying to improve the show, so if there's something good, bad, something that we may have not even thought about yet, definitely let us know, and we'll definitely take those comments and take them and work on them and try to form it into the best show possible.
The only thing we can't improve on is this. You're stuck with this. I'm sorry. There's nothing we can do. We'll just pop the radar up as much as we can.
That's right. Yeah, the radar's much better to look at than us.
Yes. So there it is. We'll leave you on the radar. Thanks for joining us on this special Thursday night, Friday morning. The Carolina Weather Group.
Have a good one.